The day America stopped breathing, he waved, he smiled. He didn't know the crosshairs had already found him. The sun was bright, the crowd was cheering, and the most powerful man in the world was riding in an open car as if history had no teeth. Then a crack, a pause, another crack, and the world changed forever. A president fell, a nation froze, and behind the silence, 1,000 questions began to whisper. Who pulled the trigger? Who gave the order? And why did the man who killed the president get killed 2 days later on live television? This isn't just a story about bullets. It's a story about secrets, about shadows in the corridors of power, about a moment so violent, so public, that America still hasn't exhaled. Welcome to the red pages of history, where every episode uncovers the moment a blade, a bullet, or a belief changed the fate of nations. Let's begin. He was young, he was handsome, he spoke like a poet and walked like a movie star. But behind the charm there was calculation. Behind the smile there was steel. And behind the man there was a myth being built in real time. John F. Kennedy was born on May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts, USA. He was the second of 9 children in the influential Kennedy family, raised in a world of wealth, ambition, and fierce competition. Son of a wealthy ambassador, raised in mansions, educated at Harvard, shaped by war. He served in the Navy during World War II. His boat was sliced in half by a Japanese destroyer. He swam for hours, towing a wounded crewman by his teeth. He came home a hero and never stopped performing. Politics was his stage, and he knew how to play it. He became a congressman, then a senator. Then, in 1960, at just 43 years old, he ran for president against Richard Nixon, against the odds, against the weight of history. He won. Barely, but he won. And suddenly, America had a new face. Young, Catholic, charismatic. A man who quoted poets, danced with celebrities, and promised a new frontier. He wasn't just a politician. He was a symbol of youth, of progress, of possibility. He spoke of civil rights, of space travel, of peace with honor. He stared down the Soviets during the Cuban Missile Crisis and didn't blink. He launched the Peace Corps. He dreamed of landing on the moon, and he did it all with style. Tailored suits, perfect hair, a voice that made speeches sound like symphonies, but the aura had shadows. Behind the scenes, there were secrets, affairs, enemies, deals with the mob, tensions with the CIA, and a Cold War that burned hotter than the public ever knew. JFK was loved, but he was also feared. He challenged the military. He threatened the intelligence agencies. He pushed for civil rights and angered the South. He tried to pull out of Vietnam and rattled the Hawks. He was a Catholic in a Protestant nation, a liberal in a divided country, a reformer in a system built on silence. And he was too visible, too powerful, too untouchable, until he wasn't. November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas, a motorcade, a convertible, a president waving to the crowd, and somewhere in a building above the street, a man with a rifle, watching, waiting, ready. JFK wasn't just a man. He was a moment, a myth, a mirror of what America wanted to be and what some believed it could never become. And when the bullets came, they didn't just kill a president. They shattered the illusion. They ended the age of innocence, and they opened the door to 1,000 theories, 1,000 fears, and 1,000 red pages in history. The year was 1961. The Cold War froze the globe in tension. The South was burning with racism, and the streets of America were starting to shake, not from bombs, but from voices demanding justice. America was rich, victorious from World War II, a global superpower. But beneath the surface, segregation still ruled the South. Black Americans were denied basic rights. Women were boxed into silence. Native Americans were invisible. The LGBTQ+ community lived in shadows. It was a country built on freedom, but not everyone was free. Black Americans were done waiting. They marched, they sat, they sang, they bled, Martin Luther King Jr. was rising. Rosa Parks had already refused to move. Freedom riders were beaten. Children were jailed for demanding dignity, and the cameras were rolling. The world was watching, and Kennedy was listening. At first, JFK was cautious. He didn't want to alienate Southern Democrats. He didn't want to lose votes, but the pressure grew. Violence escalated. The moral weight became unbearable, so he spoke. In 1963, he delivered one of the most powerful civil rights speeches ever given by a sitting president. The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. He called civil rights a moral issue, not just a political one. He proposed sweeping legislation. He sent federal troops to protect black students. He met with civil rights leaders. He began to shift the tide. But not everyone applauded. Southern governors raged. White supremacists plotted. The FBI grew paranoid, and whispers began. Was Kennedy going too far? Was he changing America too fast? Was he becoming dangerous, not to the people, but to the system? JFK wasn't just fighting the Soviets, he was fighting the ghosts inside his own country. And for some, that made him more threatening than any foreign enemy. Dallas, Texas, November 22, 1963. The sky was clear. The sun glinted off the polished hood of the open-top limousine. Crowds lined Elm Street, waving flags, smiling, cheering. In the back sat President John F. Kennedy. Beside him, Jacqueline, elegant, radiant, unaware of what history had prepared. In front, Governor John Connally and his wife. The motorcade turned onto Elm Street. Buildings loomed closer. Windows were open. And in the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, a man with a rifle was waiting. Kennedy waved. He smiled. And then the first shot rang out. At first, confusion. A sound like a firecracker. Kennedy's hand shot to his throat. Jacqueline turned, startled. Governor Connally cried out, struck in the chest. Then came the second shot, a brutal impact. Kennedy's head snapped back. Blood and silence filled the air. Jacqueline did not scream. She climbed onto the trunk, reaching desperately, as if she could gather the pieces of her husband, as if she could hold history together with her hands. One man, Abraham Zapruder, captured it all on his 8mm camera. Frame by frame, the world would later watch the unthinkable. A president's life ending in broad daylight, before his people, before the lens. The limousine sped toward Parkland Hospital. Secret Service agents clung to the car. Jacqueline cradled her husband's shattered body, but it was too late. At 1 p.m., John Fitzgerald Kennedy was pronounced dead. The youngest elected president in American history, gone in an instant. That was the moment America stopped breathing. But the story didn't end there. Within hours, a suspect was arrested. Within 2 days, that suspect would himself be murdered on live television. And questions would swirl that America is still trying to answer. Lee Harvey Oswald, a name forever tied to the death of John F. Kennedy. But who was he? A lone gunman? A communist sympathizer? A pawn in a larger game? Or something darker still? Born October 18, 1939, in New Orleans. His father died before he was born. His childhood was unstable, marked by poverty, neglect, and constant moves. At 17, he joined the U.S. Marines. A decent marksman, yet often in trouble, court-martialed twice, jailed, and increasingly drawn to radical politics. In 1959, he defected to the Soviet Union, declaring himself a Marxist. He lived in Minsk, married a Russian woman named Marina, and worked in a factory. By 1962, disillusioned, he returned to the U.S. with Marina and their baby daughter. They settled in Dallas, Texas. Oswald was restless, angry, politically obsessed. He handed out pro-Castro leaflets, tried to get a visa to Cuba, and even attempted to assassinate a right-wing general months before Kennedy's visit. From the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, Oswald allegedly fired 3 shots. One missed. One struck Kennedy in the throat and Governor Connally in the chest. The final shot shattered Kennedy's skull. The echo of the rifle shots bounced off the buildings. The crowd froze. Panic rippled through Elm Street. Kennedy's hand shot to his throat. Governor Connolly cried out. Jacqueline turned, desperate, her hands reaching for the impossible. Oswald fled the building. Within an hour, he shot and killed Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit, who tried to stop him. Minutes later, cornered in a movie theater, he was arrested. In custody, Oswald denied everything. He insisted, "I'm just a patsy," a statement that would haunt historians, reporters, and the public for decades. He claimed he was being framed, but the rifle, the fingerprints, the eyewitnesses, all pointed to him. Still, questions lingered. Was he acting alone? Or was he part of something bigger? Less than 48 hours later, November 24th, 1963, Oswald was being transferred from the city jail. Cameras rolled. Reporters crowded the basement. And then a man stepped forward. Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner, pulled a revolver and fired into Oswald's stomach. Live on television, the accused assassin of the president was himself assassinated. Oswald collapsed, gasping. He died in the same hospital where Kennedy had been pronounced dead. The Warren Commission concluded Oswald acted alone, but many never believed it. Shadows moved in every corner. Every answer seemed to lead to more questions. The magic bullet, the CIA, the Mafia, Cuba, the Soviets. What remained was a haunting symmetry, a president killed in public, his killer silenced in public, and a nation left with questions that still echo today. The president was dead, the assassin was dead, and yet the story was far from over. Theories that still haunt history. 1. Was Oswald really the lone gunman? The Warren Commission concluded he acted alone, but witnesses in Dealey Plaza swore they heard shots from multiple directions. The infamous Grassy Knoll theory suggested a second shooter. The Zapruder film shows Kennedy's head snapping backward, as if struck from the front, not behind. 2. The magic bullet theory. Officially, one bullet passed through Kennedy's neck, then struck Governor Connolly, breaking ribs, shattering a wrist, and lodging in his thigh. Critics called it impossible, a bullet that changed direction mid-air. Was it physics or fiction? 3. Oswald's mysterious background. A Marine who defected to the Soviet Union, married a Russian woman, handed out pro-Castro leaflets in New Orleans. Was he a Marxist idealist, a CIA asset, or a pawn caught between worlds? 4. The role of government agencies. Both the FBI and CIA had files on Oswald before the assassination. Why wasn't he stopped? Some believe the CIA, angered by Kennedy's refusal to fully back operations against Cuba, had motive to remove him. And so the questions continue. Why? How? And who else was truly behind it? 5. The Mafia connection. Kennedy's brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, was cracking down on organized crime. The mob had ties to Cuba, to the CIA, and possibly to Jack Ruby, the man who silenced Oswald. Some whispered that Ruby's gun was not random, that the threads of power were being quietly pulled behind the scenes. Was Ruby's act a coincidence or a cleanup? The Warren Commission, 1964, concluded Oswald acted alone. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, 1979, concluded there was probably a conspiracy involving a second gunman. Declassified files, still ongoing. Thousands of pages remain secret, fueling suspicion that the full truth has never been told. Kennedy's assassination wasn't just a murder, it was the birth of modern conspiracy culture. It taught Americans to question, to distrust, to wonder if the truth was always hidden behind locked doors. And maybe that's the real legacy. A president who inspired hope, a death that shattered innocence, and a mystery that refuses to die. History is not written in ink, it is written in blood. From the silken corridors of ancient China, where Wu Zetian erased her rivals with whispers and poison, to the sunlit streets of Dallas, where John F. Kennedy fell beneath the crack of a rifle, the lesson is the same. Power is fragile. Hope is dangerous. And those who dare to change the world often pay the highest price. But their deaths do not silence them. They echo, they haunt, they remind us that behind every crown, every flag, every promise, there are shadows, and in those shadows, history waits with a blade, a bullet, or a belief strong enough to kill. This was the red pages of history, where we don't just tell stories of the past, we open the wounds that never healed until the next page turns and the shadows reveal yet another truth.